The call came at 12:31 in the morning. I had barely closed my eyes. My neck ached from trying to sleep in the backseat of my car, which had never been designed for sleeping, and my fingers were still cold despite the heater I had left running for 40 minutes before finally switching it off to save petrol. The name on the screen made something tighten in my chest. Vikram. I answered on the second ring. For a moment, he said nothing. I heard only his breathing. Fast, shallow, nothing like the composed, unhurried voice I had lived beside for 19 years. Then he said, barely above a whisper, "Mira, why is your face on every news channel?" I looked up. Across the parking lot of the petrol station where I had stopped 2 hours earlier and had never quite managed to leave, a small television mounted near the cash counter was cycling through breaking news. Even at this distance, I recognized the yellow Ducati immediately. It was mine. 7 hours earlier, my husband of 19 years had asked me not to come home for Diwali. That was not the moment our marriage broke. It was simply the moment I finally understood that it had been breaking for a very long time. 3 days before Diwali, everything still looked ordinary from the outside. Our apartment in Pune had been decorated the week before. I had strung the diyas along every windowsill by hand, hung the torans above the front door, and arranged the rangoli in the entryway with the same care I gave it every year, even though Vikram had not commented on it in perhaps 4 or 5 years. Some habits outlast the reasons you started them. I was 43 years old. Vikram was 3 years older. We had been married for 19 years, long enough to know each other's sleep schedules and each other's emotional needs only approximately. People imagine marriages end because of one terrible event: a revelation, a confrontation, a door slammed with enough force to change everything. Most do not end that way. Most fade in small, quiet increments. One dinner where the conversation stops before it starts. One question left unasked because the answer has become too fragile to pursue. One morning where you realize you cannot remember the last time the person across from you asked whether you were happy. I had stopped working as a teacher 8 years earlier when my father-in-law had his first heart attack. Someone needed to be home, available, present. We both agreed it was the practical solution. Then 1 year became 3, and 3 became 8, and practical solutions have a way of quietly becoming permanent arrangements without anyone formally deciding they should. When my father-in-law passed away 14 months ago, I suddenly had time again. Vikram suddenly had a new title. Senior Vice President, Western Region. His world expanded. Mine had become very quiet. I had been proud of him. I want to say that clearly. I had been genuinely, completely proud of everything he had built. I only wished, sometimes, that he still noticed I was in the room. 3 days before Diwali, he called while I was in the kitchen, making the besan laddus he had loved every year since we were first married. "Mira, I'm here. I need to tell you something." I set down the spoon. "My managing director, Rajesh Malhotra. His family is coming for Diwali." "That's lovely. I'll make extra mithai. We have enough room for. That's the thing." He paused. "I was thinking it might be better if you weren't here." I was quite certain I had not heard him correctly. "Sorry?" Rajesh is very particular. He likes quiet evenings. His mother is quite traditional. Another pause. "I just don't want anything to feel complicated." Complicated. After 19 years of marriage, I had become a complication. "Vikram, I am your wife. I know that. This is my home. I know." He spoke carefully. The way you speak to someone you are hoping will simply agree. "It's one evening. You could visit your cousin in Nashik. She always says she wants you to come more often." He was not asking me to step out for an hour. He was asking me to absent myself from my own life on the most celebrated evening of the year so that his career might have a smoother night. "I've already cooked," I said quietly. "The house has been decorated for a week." "I know, and I appreciate that. I'll book a hotel for you, somewhere nice. We can celebrate properly on Diwali Day. Just us. Just us." As though that phrase were still carrying its original weight. I looked at the rangoli I had made the evening before. 2 hours spent measuring lines, choosing colors. Nobody had said a word about it. "When should I leave?" I asked. He exhaled. "Tomorrow evening would be best." "All right, you understand?" I understood perfectly. Understanding and accepting are simply not the same thing. "I'll manage," I said. He thanked me. He actually thanked me. Then the call ended. I stood in the kitchen for a long time afterward. The laddus were cooling on the tray. The diyas were lit on the windowsill. Outside, small firecrackers had already begun in the neighboring building. Nothing in the room had changed. Yet standing in the middle of my own kitchen, I felt like a guest who had just been politely reminded that her visit was coming to an end. The next evening, I packed a small bag. Not because I owned little, but because I could not decide what still felt like mine. Before zipping it closed, I reached into the cupboard and took out the old shawl Vikram had bought me on our 10th anniversary trip. Dark green wool with a simple embroidered border. I had almost left it behind. Then I wrapped it around my shoulders. Whatever came next, I refused to leave every good memory in that apartment. I locked the front door, went down to the car, and drove into the Diwali evening without a plan. I had no idea that by midnight, my face would be on every television screen in the city. The hotel Vikram had booked was clean and entirely impersonal in the way hotels always are, designed to be comfortable for anyone, which means they feel like home to no one. The room had a single window overlooking a service lane, a bed with a white bedspread, and a small table with 2 chairs that felt like an arrangement for company I did not have. I sat on the edge of the bed without removing my shawl. The sounds of Diwali came through the window. Distant music, firecrackers in several directions at once, the occasional burst of color that lit the edge of the sky before fading. Every year of our marriage, Vikram and I had stood on our balcony to watch the fireworks. I had always brought the chai. This year I had a hotel minibar and a view of a service lane. Vikram texted at 7 in the evening. "Hope you're comfortable. Rajesh's family just arrived. Happy Diwali." I read the message several times. I finally typed, "Happy Diwali," 3 words. The minimum required. By 8, the hotel restaurant had filled with families. A grandmother in a yellow saree was feeding a grandchild who kept turning his head away from the spoon. 2 sisters were arguing cheerfully about their mother's recipe. A man at the corner table was video calling someone and holding the phone up so they could see the decorations. I ate alone. The food was good. I tasted almost none of it. After dinner, I drove. Not toward anything specific. Simply away from the hotel room that had begun to feel like a verdict. I drove through neighborhoods I had known for years, watching other people's Diwali through their windows. Families gathered around the puja thali. Children running with sparklers in the street. An elderly couple sitting on their doorstep watching the diyas burn down. At 9:40, my phone showed a notification from a community volunteer group I had joined 3 years earlier. A road had flooded near Katraj from unexpected rain combined with drainage blocked by Diwali waste. A temporary shelter near the community hall needed volunteers. I looked at the passenger seat. My purse. No dinner to return to. No one expecting me. I typed, "I'm 10 minutes away." Coming now. The community hall smelled of floor wax and damp clothing, and the particular organized chaos of a space being repurposed very quickly. Volunteers were unfolding cots, distributing dry clothes from donation bags, keeping children occupied while their parents registered with the coordinators. A coordinator named Sunanda, a woman in her 50s with the calm authority of someone who had managed emergencies before, pointed me toward the supply room the moment I arrived. For the next 2 hours, I distributed biscuits and water, helped 3 different mothers settle their children onto cots, found a working charger for a man whose phone had died and whose wife did not know where he was, and sat with an elderly woman who simply needed someone beside her until her son arrived. None of it was remarkable. It was simply useful. And useful felt far better than unnecessary. Around 11:30, Sananda touched my arm. "The roads are clearing. You should head back before they close the underpass." I nodded, collected my bag, and walked out into the night. The rain had stopped, but the roads were still wet, the streetlights reflecting in long orange columns across the standing water. Most of the firecrackers had gone quiet. The city was settling into its late-night self. I had driven perhaps 3 kilometers when I saw the auto rickshaw. It had skidded on a section of road made slick by oil runoff from a nearby workshop, gone over the edge of a low bridge wall, and come to rest half in the narrow drainage channel below. Not a river, but deep enough, and moving fast from the night's rain. The driver had already climbed free and was standing on the road, dazed. But 2 passengers were still inside, a woman who appeared to be in her 60s, and a girl of perhaps 8 or 9 years old. 3 other vehicles had stopped. People were on their phones. 2 men stood at the edge of the bridge wall looking down, uncertain. The channel was not deep enough to drown an adult who was standing, but the auto had tipped sideways. The woman inside was not standing, and the child was screaming. I do not have a clear memory of deciding to climb down. I remember my dupatta catching on the bridge railing. I remember the cold of the water hitting my feet, then my knees. I remember that the ground beneath was uneven and covered in something I could not see. The girl I reached first. She had wedged herself into the far corner of the auto and was holding the seat frame with both hands. "Give me your hand," I said. She did. I pulled her out through the door frame, which had bent enough to create an opening, and passed her up to a man on the bank who had finally come down to help. The older woman was harder. Her salwar had caught in the exposed metal of the frame. She was not panicking. She was entirely calm in the way that sometimes means someone is in shock, but she could not move without tearing the fabric beneath it. Another man had come down by this point. Between us, we worked the fabric loose in the darkness, slowly, without tools, while someone above us held a phone torch pointed at the wrong angle for most of it. When she finally came free and we lifted her up onto the bank, she looked at me for a long moment and said, in a voice that was completely steady, "My child, you have a good heart." I did not know what to say to that, so I said nothing. By the time the police and ambulance arrived, both passengers had been helped to the roadside, blankets had appeared from somewhere, and the auto driver was sitting on the curb with his head in his hands. I was standing off to one side, wringing water from my shawl when a young man with a camera approached. "Ma'am, I'm from the digital news desk. Can I ask you a few questions?" I almost said no. I was wet, tired, and had no desire to be on camera. Instead, I said, very briefly. He asked what had made me climb down. I said I had seen a child and an elderly woman who needed help and had been close enough to provide it. He asked what I hoped people took from the night. I said, I hope that woman and her granddaughter get to finish their Diwali together. That is all. The interview lasted perhaps 90 seconds. I walked back to my car, drove to the petrol station, and sat in the parking lot. I had no idea the clip was already playing on 4 different news channels. Before I tell you what happened next, if this story is touching something in you right now, if you have ever felt invisible in a place that was supposed to feel like home, please take a moment to like this video. And if you want to hear more stories like this one, about ordinary people who find their strength in unexpected places, subscribe to this channel and ring the bell so you never miss one. Drop a comment below and tell me, has anyone ever shown up for you when the people closest to you did not? I read every single one. Now let me tell you what happened when Vikram called. Vikram's call came at 12:31. I answered and heard his breathing before I heard his voice. Quick, unsteady, nothing like the man who had been hosting a quiet Diwali dinner 6 hours earlier. Mira, his voice was strange, thin. Why is your face on every news channel? I looked across the parking lot at the television above the petrol station counter. Even at that distance, I recognized the yellow dupatta I had left behind on the bridge railing. The camera had caught me climbing back up the embankment with my saree wet to the waist. It was nothing serious, I said. An auto went into a drainage channel. I helped. Silence. You went into a... The water was not very deep. Everyone is fine. More silence. Then, from somewhere behind him, I heard another voice. Male, older, authoritative. Vikram. It was Rajesh Malhotra, his managing director. Is that her? Vikram did not answer immediately. Rajesh spoke again, clearly looking at a screen nearby, the woman from the Katraj incident, the volunteer. Is that your wife? A long pause. Yes, Vikram said quietly. I heard Rajesh say something I could not make out entirely. Then a woman's voice, Rajesh's wife, saying clearly, she went into the water for strangers. On Diwali night. A pause. Where is she right now? Vikram did not answer that question. He could not answer it without answering a very different question first. He came back to the phone. Mira, I am coming to get you. You do not need to do that. Please. Vikram. I kept my voice calm. You have guests. There. He stopped. Mira, I made a mistake. You made a choice, I said. There is a difference. The line went quiet again. Get some sleep, I said. We can talk when your guests have left. They already left. I had not expected that. When? About 40 minutes ago, when the news started. I looked at the television again. The clip was playing a second time. A third. Someone had decided it was a good Diwali story. The kind that reminded people that ordinary human beings occasionally did something beyond ordinary. What they did not know, watching it, was that the woman in the clip had spent Diwali alone in a hotel room because her husband had found her inconvenient. I hope you sleep well, I said. Mira. Good night, Vikram. I ended the call. I sat in the car for a few minutes. Then I started the engine and drove back to the hotel. I woke up the next morning to sunlight coming through the curtains and my phone showing 87 notifications. Former colleagues. A cousin I had not spoken with in 2 years. Parents from the school where I had taught before I left to care for my father-in-law. Neighbors from our building. Every message was some version of the same thing. They had seen the clip. They were proud of me. Were you all right? One message stood apart. It was from Rajesh Malhotra's wife, Priya, whose number I had somewhere in my phone and had never used. Her message said, I watched the news this morning. My husband and I were very moved. I hope you are resting. Also, I hope everything is all right at home. You deserve to be celebrated today. I stared at that last sentence for a long time. She did not know what had happened. She simply knew that something had not been quite right about Diwali, and she was the kind of woman who acknowledged things quietly and with precision. Around noon, my phone rang. It was Rajesh Malhotra. I answered, surprised. "Mrs. Mira," he said, "I hope I am not disturbing you. Not at all. I wanted to call personally to say that what you did last night was remarkable." My wife has not stopped talking about it since this morning. I said what one says, that it had not been anything extraordinary, that anyone nearby would have done the same. There was a small pause. Then Rajesh said, in a different tone, "I also want to say something else. My wife and I realized this morning that we may have been, however indirectly, the reason you were not at home last night." I said nothing. I do not know exactly what Vikram told you, but I spoke with him this morning. He paused. "I want you to know that any colleague of mine who believes a business relationship requires the absence of his wife from her own home has fundamentally misunderstood what I value in the people who work for me." I listened without interrupting. "Vikram is talented," Rajesh continued. "He always has been. But talent without character is a limited asset. And character shows itself most clearly in the way a person treats the people they love when no one important is watching." He paused. "Last night, someone important was watching. I was. And what I saw was you." I thanked him, genuinely. Then I ended the call and sat in my car in the hotel parking lot for a long time. Vikram came to see me 3 days later. I was staying with my cousin Nalini in Nashik. Nalini had not asked many questions. She had opened the door, looked at my face, and made me eat something. That was all. Vikram arrived on a Tuesday morning without calling first. Nalini opened the door, looked at me across the room, and when I nodded once, she disappeared into the kitchen. He sat down in the chair across from me. He did not bring flowers. He did not bring a prepared speech. He brought himself, which is sometimes the more difficult thing to carry. "I spoke to a counselor," he said, "day before yesterday. I had not expected that. He asked me one question I have been thinking about since." Vikram looked at his own hands. He asked me, "When did success stop feeling like something you were building with someone and start feeling like something you were protecting from everyone around you?" I waited. "I did not have an answer," he said, which meant the answer was a long time ago, long enough that I stopped noticing it had happened. Outside, Nalini's neighbor was burning garden waste. The smell of smoke drifted through the window. "I am not going to tell you that one Diwali made me understand everything," Vikram said. "I know it was not one night. I know it was years of one night, stacked on top of each other, until it became the shape of our whole life." "Yes," I said, "that is accurate." He looked at me. Not the way someone looks at a person they are trying to convince. The way someone looks at a person they are finally, actually seeing. "I turned down the regional expansion role," he said. "That surprised me." "When?" "Yesterday morning." He looked down. Rajesh asked me why. I told him the truth. That I had been confusing the size of my career with the quality of my life, and that I had recently been given very clear evidence of the difference. What did he say? Vikram smiled faintly. He said, "That is the first genuinely intelligent thing you have said to me in 2 years." I almost smiled. Almost. "I am not asking you to come home today," he said. "I am not asking you to forgive me on any particular timeline. I am asking whether you are willing to let me try to become someone worth coming home to." The room was quiet. Outside, a child was calling for someone in the neighbor's yard. A door opened and closed. "I will think about it," I said. It was the most honest answer I had. The months after that were slower than I expected. We did not move back together immediately. What we did instead was more careful and also more real. Saturday mornings for coffee. Walks where phones stayed in pockets. Conversations that began as updates and occasionally became something more. I started teaching again. Not full-time, but 3 mornings a week at a school that ran remedial classes for children who had fallen behind. The pay was modest. I did not need it to be otherwise. I needed to be in a room where I was necessary for a reason that had nothing to do with convenience. Vikram started volunteering, not because I had asked him to. He had called Sunanda at the community hall himself and asked what they needed. She had put him on the Tuesday afternoon shift, the same as me, and we had spent 3 months working in the same building without discussing it, which was somehow exactly right. One Tuesday in March, I found him in the storage room repairing a broken shelf unit with a screwdriver and considerably more patience than the task required. "You missed the break," I said. He did not look up. "I know. You do not have to make up for anything by staying late." He tightened one last screw and sat back on his heels. "I know that too." He looked up then. I just found I did not want to leave yet. I stood in the doorway for a moment. Then I said, "There is chai left if you want it." He said he did. We drank it together on the back steps of the community hall, watching the late afternoon light move across the buildings across the street. We did not talk about the marriage or the future or Diwali. We talked about a boy Vikram had been helping with mathematics. We talked about whether the storage room shelf would hold. It was an ordinary conversation. the most ordinary we had shared in years. It was also the moment I understood that ordinary conversations, shared freely, without performance or strategy, are how people rebuild what they have spent years quietly taking apart. The following Diwali, I was home. Not the same apartment. We had moved to a smaller place, one we had chosen together, where every corner felt decided rather than inherited. Vikram had strung the diyas along the windowsills. I had made the ladoos. Before lighting the first diya, Vikram looked at the rangoli I had made in the entryway. "I noticed it," he said. I looked at him. "I should have said so every year," he said. "I noticed it every year. I just stopped saying so. And I do not fully understand why, except that I stopped saying a great many things without realizing how much the silence was costing both of us." I looked at the rangoli, the same pattern I had made for 19 years. Then I looked at him. "The orange in the center is new this year," I said. He looked. "It is good, I know." We lit the first diya together. Later that evening, standing on the balcony with the chai I had made and the city quietly celebrating below us, Vikram said something I have thought about many times since. He said, "Home is not the place your name is on the lease. It is the place where your presence is never treated as a problem to be managed." I looked at him. "I read that somewhere," he admitted. But I also finally understood what it meant. I handed him his chai. "Drink it before it gets cold," I said. He did. If this story stayed with you today, I want to ask you something. Have you ever felt invisible in a place that was supposed to feel like home? Have you ever smiled through a holiday that felt like someone else's celebration in a life that had quietly started belonging to everyone but you? Tell me in the comments, because I believe more people carry this particular kind of silence than the world ever talks about. And if Mira's story gave you even a small reminder that your presence is never supposed to be a complication, please share this with someone who needs to hear that today. Like this video if you stayed until the end. Subscribe if you want to be here for the next story. Hit the bell so you never miss it. Wherever you are watching from right now, thank you for spending your time here today. I will see you next time. The call came at 12:31 in the morning. I had barely closed my eyes. My neck ached from trying to sleep in the back